Hi, and welcome to the first installment of our LinkedIn Live series, ISM World 2023, The People You'll Meet. My name is Dan Zeiger. I'm a senior writer and copy editor for Inside Supply Management, which is Institute for Supply Management's member publication. And we're excited to have you as part of today's event. Our time together will be focused on one of our session presenters, one of the people that you'll meet at the conference, which is this May in Grapevine, Texas, just outside of Dallas. The next 30 minutes will be an interactive experience, one that we hope you'll like and share, enabling you to learn more about the conference as well as get to know Lisa Ryan. She's a dynamic speaker who knows her stuff. Feel free to ask questions throughout today's event, and we'll be sure to address them by the end of our presentation. And before we get started, don't be shy about commenting in the chat feature about where you're joining us from today, and if you've already registered for ISM World 2023. You can make a virtual connection right here today with people that you may meet later in person at the conference. Today offers a preview of one of our many breakout sessions over the 3 days that the supply management profession will convene deep in the heart of Texas. And that session is titled, Keep Your Best People in a Post-Pandemic Recovery. One only needs to look at the monthly employment data to know that in a world where COVID-19 is still very much with us, it's an employee-centric economy in which workers have many potential alternative choices, and the supply management profession is no exception. This session will provide strategies for companies to survive in a competitive environment, primarily by creating a workplace culture that people want to be a part of. In many ways, the pandemic has changed business for good, putting a premium on the ability to attract and retain talent. There's a lot for supply management leaders to unpack, and luckily for us, I know just who to ask about it. So let's welcome her now. She's Lisa Ryan. She's an MBA and a certified speaking professional who is the founder and chief appreciation strategist at Grategy. That's a firm based in Cleveland. And she helps organizations develop employee and customer engagement strategies to retain their top talent. And she's a best-selling author of 11 books. So welcome, Lisa.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Dan. Good to be here.
Yeah, you speak at a lot of events, and I guess a good question to get us started today is just, why is it important to convene with professional colleagues on an occasional basis? And, what attracted you most to want to be a part of ISM World 2023?
Well, I think during the pandemic, we got so used to virtual interactions and connecting with people. We all came on our cameras and wanted to see people. But now we get to go to live events where people have bodies and legs, and we can actually shake hands with them and feel that energy in the room. So it's just been so good to be back. And it's nice to see record attendance at a lot of the places that I'm speaking at, just because we're so starved for that human connection that ISM is going to allow us to come back together and enjoy that fellowship.
Well, let's discuss the topic of your session. From your chair and your standpoint, why has it been difficult to retain employees during the pandemic? Especially in supply management, where burnout has been well documented.
Right. And that's been a big part of it. But you look at what happened in the last 3 years, and a lot of it is that our priorities changed. So we're not going back to the good old days of 2019. First of all, we had a lot of fear with the pandemic. People were working from home. They were laid off. And then when they started coming back to work, a lot of times management or ownership would say, well, we were able to get away without these other people that we laid off. So why don't we just continue? And now you're seeing the burnout because people are doing the work of many more people. But again, with the ability to work from home, to have some flexibility, to realize the importance of spending time with our loved ones, having more work-life balance, we have to look at business differently today. And as you just mentioned, burnout is a big thing because before the pandemic, we kind of looked at mental health like, back in the day when we'd call and go, yeah, I'm sick today, because we needed a mental health day. Now it's a real thing, and that's coming to the forefront. So really keeping an eye, looking for the signs that your employees are going through and seeing what we can do to help them and support them, because otherwise they're going to take that next job and they're going to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when and reading up on you and some of the things that you talk about, I learned that the name of your firm is not an accident. It's based on gratitude strategies, a play on that term, or Grategies.
Right.
What are the top gratitude strategies or Grategies for employee engagement and retention? And why is gratitude? You don't hear that term a lot in terms of executives and company strategy. Why is that such an important part of the equation?
It's really the foundation of just about all of the sessions that I do, because when we think about employee engagement or employee retention, it's something that you do to people. And in a lot of cases, it's a check mark. It's like, okay, how am I going to engage my employees? Check, did that. But when we can focus on gratitude, and there's a lot of research behind it, there is nothing soft about what I'm bringing to the table. As a matter of fact, in 2014, the Greater Good Science Center actually received a $7 million grant just to study gratitude and the power that it has for us to find the good, even when things are everything's falling apart. So in the workplace, a lot of times managers are so focused on what's wrong, how can we do this better? How can you be quicker? Where instead, if you let your employees know, you know what, I really appreciate the fact that you put in overtime so we could get this order shipped out. Customer really appreciated, and I did too. People are sometimes afraid to do that because they say, well, if I say thank you to my employees for doing their job, they're going to get all cocky and stuff, and then they're not going to want to work. And the opposite is true. When employees actually feel that their leaders appreciate their efforts, when they listen to them, when they take their ideas and suggestions seriously, because your employees see your business differently than you see it. And so by bringing them into the equation, recognizing the good that they do, actually erring on the side of catching them in the act of doing things well, you'll actually get more productivity than when you're always harping on what's wrong, because that is not inspiring, and that's when people leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how can these approaches, where remote work is still a big dynamic, even 3 years into the pandemic now, how can these approaches be tailored to a remote work environment? Because our ISM salary surveys have shown that that's something that's still an increasingly desired option for prospective supply management employees. Work-life balance is very important, and remote work is something that our surveys are finding is increasingly important. And I imagine that's the same in a lot of professions as well.
Absolutely. Well, and it's important to keep that personal edge, because when we're in the office or we're in the plant, in the shop, whatever the organization is, we can go get coffee, we can have those hallway conversations, we can pop in on somebody and just chat for a couple minutes. And we need to bring more of that into the remote environment. Is because if you're scheduling a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting or something, and all you do, everybody, you see all the little faces on camera, you get down to business, get the meeting over with, there's no connection. So just starting out, kind of like what you did, Dan, is having people, hey, put in the chat, where you're coming in from. Maybe in an organization, hey, put in the chat, how you're doing today. Share one good thing that's going on, and building those connections so that we can have some fun. That's one thing that the pandemic really did, is it opened up technology to a point that I would have never thought 3 years ago that I would be doing full day training sessions and keynotes and everything from the comfort of my own home. But we look at those, the technology that we have, but we still want to remember that personal connection. Having happy hours, getting people together the same way as you would do in person. But, there's game shows you can do. There's so much additional ways that we can get online and have fun. I mean, just because we're not showing that we have bodies and legs right now doesn't mean that we can't connect from the eyes and from the smile and from those facial expressions of sharing what's going on with us personally, as well as the successes and what's going on with us in business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going off the beaten path a little bit. What are some of the, when you talk to executives or counsel with them, what are some of the hurdles that they express to you, or that you find that are getting in the way of creating that culture that we're talking about?
Well, part of it is just being accessible.
Mm-hmm.
If you're walking into the office and you're just zooming right to the office, right to your office,
Mm-hmm.
and not making eye contact and not stopping and saying hello, hey, how's your day going? How are you doing today? And actually caring about the answers, there's a disconnect there. So sometimes, like I've had in some of my programs, I remember there was one gentleman and I said, well, how do you connect with your staff? And he was kind of an introverted guy, a little bit out of his comfort zone. But he said, you know what? I walk through the plant and every day I just say good morning to everybody. I say good morning to every single person that I see. And then he can see a lot. Is that person having a good day? Are they having a bad day? Are they normally a happy person and they just kind of blew him off? And if that's the case, he can either continue to the office and whatever that person is going through, they can just deal with it. Or he can say, you know what, you're not your normal self today. What's going on? Is there anything I can do to support you? Because you don't know if that was the day the employee was saying, you know what, I'm done. I'm out of here. These people don't care about me. But the fact that that owner, that leader walked through and said, you're not yourself today. What's going on? How can I help? That person might say, you know what? I think I'm going to stick it out, because you don't know if that employee is looking for new jobs or being tempted with what they're seeing online or anything. So it's those day-to-day personal connections. Again, saying thank you, catching employees doing a good job, but doing it specifically. Because if I say, hey, Dan, great job, you're going to be like, what was so great about it? But if I say, Dan, the fact that before we got on this, you and I met together to have a conversation, to kind of get a feel for this, that was so professional and I appreciate that. Now you know specifically what it is that you did, instead of me just saying, hey, it was great. So for people this is not their love language, it's not their comfort level of being all mushy gushy and gooey, to just look at it as a science project. What did that person do well? How did they do a little bit better than they did last time? And maybe the fact that they're just always there. They may not be your rock star. They may not be a problem child. They're just kind of that middle of the road. But you stop and say, you know what? I appreciate the fact that you're always here. I can count on you.
Mm-hmm.
There's this, in the Gallup organization, it talks about that 30% of our employees are actively engaged. These are the ones that you're actually paying less money than the value that they're bringing. And about 20% of your employees are actively disengaged. And those are the problem children that basically suck the air out of the room when you come in. But you have this 50% of your employees who either can turn into rock stars or they can join the problem children. So maybe when you stop and you let that person know, you know what, I just want to let you know, I have not been letting you know how much I appreciate your efforts. I'm going to do better at that now. And again, that employee now builds that commitment, because that 50% of basically that disengaged employees, we've heard them called quiet quitters, the ones that are doing just enough work so that they don't get fired. That 50% of your workforce is the glue that holds you together. So maybe reaching out to people who you don't normally connect with in that positive way, maybe that's a really simple step to get started.
Yeah. Well, when we talked before, and obviously this is a dynamic that a lot of people, a lot of executives are finding, the generational divide. I mean, not only is the pandemic, forcing these kind of changes in workplace culture, just the new generation of workers that are coming up are generating it anyway, because they don't think like, I'm not going to date you, but I'll date me. I joke with some of my ISM employees, I'm one of the few people in the company that can remember MTV when it actually played music videos. I use that, the generational divide. I'm up on the higher end of the scale, but, I see the younger workers at ISM and what they bring to the company. And at ISM, I can tell you, we found a way to bridge that and celebrate those generational differences. And it's fostered great teamwork. what are some of the strategies that, a company needs to do or, can element, to bridge that gap?
Well, number one, with our tenured workers, we want to make them still feel valued and relevant. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when my husband started reporting to two people who were younger than him for the first time in his career, and it was devastating. So we want to find ways through mentorship programs or putting them in contact, a buddy program. You have a brand new employee starting, and maybe you team them up with that tenured employee and buy them both lunch. That way they can get to know each other. And because of technology, all the music that we have access to, the generations, we can bond on that great music that you and I were listening to in the 70s and 80s, and people know what it is. It's like they understand. And with your younger workers, with your newer workers coming in, we're past the days of they got to pay their dues. Nobody's paying their dues anymore. So just stop that. They see the world differently. So like I like to share in my programs, so when you have that brand new person come into your office and they're like, this is my first 2 days in the industry, but I see some things that I'd like to share with you. And you're doing everything in your power so that your eyes don't roll back in your head. Here we go again. Take a moment and listen to them, because you don't know the experience that they have or the way that they see your business. That may be exactly what you need to hear. So the people who are coming in, they're educated. A lot of them have college degrees with, student loan debt that they're trying to figure out how to pay off. So it's looking at them as a valuable asset right off the bat and finding out from them. The other thing I talk about a lot in my programs are the stay interviews, of finding out your employees. What keeps you here? What do you like about working here? What would cause you to leave? And having those conversations so you're not surprised when that person comes in and gives you their 2-week notice.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat. One of them is from Thomas, and he wants to know, for an organization going through layoffs, is there anything that you can recommend to keep the team motivated and shown appreciation?
The honesty and transparency. Employees realize when times are bad and something needs to happen. I mean, it reminds me, October 12th, 2010. My medical sales position was eliminated via group conference call with 12 of us getting canned at the same time. It was an absolute surprise. We didn't know. And they had us on the phone that they canned us, and then got on the phone with the rest of the people and said, oh, by the way, we just laid off these 12 people. Without ever saying, thank you for your service. It was great. This is a business decision. So even though it's heartbreaking and not a conversation you want to have, I mean, nobody likes to fire people. Nobody likes to lay off people, because you're not only affecting the employee, you're literally removing food from the mouths of their children. So none of us like to do it. But if you can ask your employees, what ideas do you have? What do you see? Ways that we can make money, that we can earn money, that we can get people back. When leadership takes a pay cut so that they don't have to have that big of a layoff, that speaks volumes to employees versus them hearing on the internet that all the executives just got a huge bonus. So openness, honesty, transparency, and asking your employees for their support and help to get you through this. And then when you're through it, to actually show that sign of faith of bringing people back.
Another question, and this is a thing that came up in my mind too as we were discussing. Someone wants to know, how can employee happiness be measured? I mean, as you're going through this process, especially I imagine if you're starting it for the first time and you're an executive, what are some of the tangible results that you should be seeing to know that, some of these culture changes that you're implementing in the company are actually working?
Right. Well, let's start out with this disclaimer. Your company culture didn't happen overnight, and it is not changing overnight. So this is a process. It's not something that you do. So you're going to start with some kind of employee survey, but instead of bringing in some high-priced consultant that's going to do this whole survey thing and then give you results 12 months from now, start with some pulse surveys. Start with stay interviews where you're having conversations with people and finding out from them what's going on. I mean, we all can feel culture. You know, you walk into a restaurant, you can feel if employees like working there. It's the same with an organization. When you have an employee, a new employee coming in for an interview, they can feel your culture. So start there. What does your culture feel like? When you're walking through the plant, are people laughing and saying hello and talking to each other and getting along? Or are they head down like, oh no, don't see me, don't see me. And just that saying that there's no interaction. So just by starting to pay attention and asking yourself the difficult question of what does my culture feel like? If I were a stranger walking into this plant, would I feel good or would I feel bad when I left? And then you do the survey, you start to find out, and then you act on suggestions. Give your employees, say, hey, we got this idea from Joe. We got this idea from Juan. We got this idea from Sally. That way your employees see that you're implementing things. And finally, and most importantly, give your managers the tools and resources so that they can listen to their employees. Make an investment. You just invested the time and perhaps some money into that survey itself. Now make sure that you're investing in the follow-up resources so that employees are actually seeing some benefit from them, you know, filling that out. Otherwise, they'll be like, well, that was a waste of breath. Not going to do that anymore. We need to show that we're listening and acting.
Yeah. As we were talking, you know, I took note of the personal anecdote you shared about the layoff that you went through, the mass layoff, you know, and it was impersonal, you know, to say the least. You know, could you just talk about that, about how your personal work experiences have kind of shaped, you know, some of the things that you talk about and some of the things that you advise companies about?
Yeah. Well, the thing that I think that people don't realize when you have a layoff like that is that connection, because again, it's difficult to do. I'm sure that they didn't like going through the list and telling the 12 of us that, you know, that we were gone at the end of that phone call. But it's the utter abandonment that happens to people like me afterwards. I mean, I was there for 7 years. I had friends and people that I had been with and worked with and was on product teams with. But because people didn't know what to say, they said nothing at all. So not only was I relieved of my post in one of the most impersonal ways ever, but I was also abandoned by my colleagues. So, you know, it just have to have a little bit more personal. Like if they were to call me as an individual and say, you know, Lisa, this is so difficult because you've been such a valuable part of our team. I mean, you wrote our company newsletter, you were on every product team. And unfortunately, it came down to a business decision and we're eliminating your territory. But here's 6 months of severance and you can buy your company car and we're going to give you your laptop, which they did. But it was, so the things that they did to take care of me were great. But what I missed was that personal interaction of just knowing that, you know what, I mattered. And what that did for me is it basically started my speaking career and gave me a signature story. And the other thing too is that right around that time, the movie Up in the Air came out. That was the movie where George Clooney was going across the country firing people. And I tell you, I could not see the movie for years after that. And when I finally saw it, it was like PTSD, man. It brought it all of those feelings back.
Yeah.
On the other hand, being laid off on that phone call is the single best thing that ever happened to me. Because if it hadn't, I wouldn't be doing what I did now. So sometimes when you make those difficult decisions to get rid of the people, whether it be for a layoff or, you know, problems with that employee, sometimes you are giving that employee the push that they need to take their lives, to take their careers to the next level. And that's exactly what happened to mine. So even though it's, like I said, for a lot of years, it was my signature story 13 years ago now. But I am forever grateful that it happened, because it gave me the opportunity to get this message out, to share the importance of gratitude strategies and connecting with employees on that personal level so that they bring their very best every day to work.
Yeah. Well, we've been spending time with Lisa Ryan here. Her session at ISM World 2023 is going to be called Keep Your Best People in a Post-Pandemic Recovery. Really appreciated your time. I learned a lot. I knew I would. In the next minute or so, I mean, anything that I didn't ask or anything that we haven't talked about that you think might be vital for our listeners to walk away with today?
Well, a lot of what we talked about on our time together sounds like soft skills. And I think that we should ban that word from our vocabulary, because they're essential skills. They're essential skills to human connection. And everything in my program will be backed up by research and science and numbers. And again, if it sounds like it's going to be fluffy, oh, I have to be nice to these people. It's not. You're going to walk out of there with actionable ideas and strategies that you can start using that day or when you leave ISM and go back to work, but you can start implementing so that you can keep your top talent from becoming someone else's.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Lisa. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you at conference. Thanks again.
Sounds great. Bye.
Well, thanks to Lisa, and a huge thank you to you for joining us. And we hope that you found some great takeaways and that you'll join us at ISM World 2023. It's May 7th through 10th, just outside of Dallas in Grapevine, Texas. If you've already registered, we look forward to seeing you. And if you haven't, just be aware that ISM's current rate tier will expire February 28th. So you can save up to $500 by registering before then. To learn more, go to ismworld.org/annual. And if you'd like to learn more about sessions at ISM World 2023, we'll have LinkedIn Live sessions for the next 3 Tuesdays, same time, same platform, with more smart people who will bring compelling content to our conference. And they are some of the people that you'll meet at ISM World 2023. For Lisa Ryan and some great folks that helped out behind the scenes today, Robin Garrison, and someone who did join us from deep in the heart of Texas. Her name is Haley Minshew. I'm Dan Zeiger. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, and I especially hope to see you at conference.